Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today at this Your Overseas Home webinar, focused today on starting your property buying journey in Portugal. My name's Hannah Armstrong, and I'm one of the team here at Your Overseas Home. And you may have also come across us as our sister business, Property Guides. Now, as a business as a whole, we have been assisting property buyers with their purchases for over 10 years now. What we do is we aim to offer you the most useful resources, connect you with leading experts in the industry, help you avoid any pitfalls in this process, and save you money and make it as fun and enjoyable as possible for you. Our recent survey that we did of our European property buyers told us that on average, just over half of you are looking to retire to Europe in the next few years. Now, whether it is a retirement home or you're just here today thinking about a holiday home, we're delighted to have you all with us and help you on this journey and turn your dream into a reality for you. Now, today I'm joined by 5 industry experts who are leading in their field and are here to support you to purchase in Portugal. First up, we'll hear from Trevor Charnley, I'm stumbling over my words, Trevor Charnley of Smart Currency Exchange and Jacqueline Mullen of Mortgage Direct. We're also joined today by Evia and Filippo from JLL, who are going to talk about the property hunting start of the process. And lastly, you will hear from Sofia of Martinez. Now, today we're going to cover topics such as how to start the journey from home, what you might want to think about in terms of currency and budgeting, how to go about finding the right property, and once you've found the property, what to do in terms of the legalities and things like that. For those of you listening in live, if you've got any questions that you do want to ask the 5 panelists today, please do type them in using the questions section on the right-hand side of your screen. We as a panel have also got some questions that we want to ask you, our audience, today. So if you could also use the polls section on the right-hand side of the screen to give us your answers there. They're all confidential, but we will try and tailor the session based on the responses you've given us there. Now, at the time of recording today, in mid-May in the UK, Portugal is on the UK's green list, meaning quarantining free travel as it currently stands. So we're really excited to help you kickstart your journey from home, get out to Portugal as soon as you can and find that wonderful property. So how can you start this buying journey from home then? You can start by heading over to the Property Guides website and downloading our free buying guides. We've got a range of different guides, specialist guides focusing on Portugal, and then also guides about immigration, about viewing trips, about currency, really helpful resources there. They offer background information, step-by-step advice and checklists and things. So they're completely free to download, and I'll share the link at the end as to how you do that. Within the Property Guides business, we've also got a fantastic content writing team who go out, they're on the ground, they're speaking with the industry, speaking with experts, and they produce a wealth of blogs, articles, and advice. Again, they're all completely free to access on the Property Guides website and also by subscribing to our newsletters. So do make sure you're taking advantage of all of those. So once you've done your reading at home, you've found out as much information as you can, you're going to want to start by thinking about your budget. So to talk about budget and currency, I would first like to introduce Trevor from Smart Currency Exchange. Now, Trevor has worked in foreign exchange for over 10 years across a range of businesses in this industry. So he's really well placed to support you with all of your currency needs and find the best solution for you. So welcome today, Trevor. Can I start by asking you to give us a little bit of background into Smart Currency Exchange and how you can help our viewers today?
Sure, no problem at all. So the business has been in existence for 17 years now, and we literally help thousands of international buyers each year help make their dreams come true effectively. Currency is a real interesting one, but it's really a consequence of what you're looking to do. Clearly nobody wakes up in the morning thinking I must make an international payment today or must make a currency transaction today. It's just a consequence of going through that process of making an overseas purchase, and ultimately it can formulate such an important part of what you do during this buying process. It really can be the difference between affording your dream property and not. Even if you look at a very, very stable currency pair such as pound sterling to euro, if you look at the averages over the last 3 years between the highest rates and the lowest rates over a given annual period, you're looking at a difference of 10% roughly on a yearly basis. So at which point, when you're going through that initial property purchase, budgeting can be an absolute huge part of what you need to consider and what you need to do. Imagine you're in a scenario where you find that dream property, whatever the price may be, 250,000 euros, for example. You go through that buying process, you put in the time, effort, and energy. It takes you 3 to 6 months. And by the time you come to actually complete on that property, the exchange rate's moved 10%. If feasibly that property that was going to cost you £220,000, sorry, £200,000 is suddenly £220,000. They could be the difference between you actually being able to afford that property and not. So the currency provision and the currency service that you can receive is absolutely critical. Typically, you won't get that kind of assistance or guidance from your high street bank. It just isn't something that they're geared up to do. It isn't something that they offer. So it's really important to engage with a currency specialist that has a specialism around overseas property to really help you right from the outset, from that budgeting phase all the way through to actually completing on that transaction.
Great, thank you, Trevor. That's a really helpful initial insight there. You obviously talked there about the changes in rate and the impact that can have on the affordability of a property for customers. How early in their buying journey should customers be talking to Smart and kind of planning and thinking about currency?
I would recommend from the absolute outset, from when you're in your initial research phase and looking for areas that you're looking to buy in, or perhaps making those first initial contacts with, looking online at property portals or estate agents, etc. I would recommend speaking to us from the absolute outset, even if it's just that 5-10 minute conversation to say, okay, well, we're looking to purchase in Portugal in this particular region. This is the amount of sterling that I have budgeted to be able to go make that move and make that property transaction, and at which point we can assist you just with those considerations in terms of what that means for your euro budget. That initial conversation may be a 5-10 minute type scenario just to give you that context of what realistically you should be able to afford in euros, and we can also give you that guidance on the initial rate movements that you should consider, and perhaps build in a bit of a buffer as well.
Brilliant, great advice there, Trevor. Thank you so much. Now, are you able to talk us through the actual transfer process and the sort of different types of transfer and solutions that you can offer the listeners today?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's really straightforward. When you, I suppose, if you go and research this stuff yourself online, it can be a bit of a minefield, quite frankly. That's one of the beauties and one of the pitfalls of Google, I suppose. There's a million different people which will write about buying property overseas or currency related activities when it comes to that. But actually, it's very, very simple and straightforward. So an awful lot of people, when they're buying overseas, will utilize a product called a forward contract, which is probably one of the most popular products in this type of scenario. A forward contract, what that allows you to do is it allows you to fix an exchange rate today for a future date. Okay, so what that means for you during your buying process is, once you've set your budget initially, you've gone and found your property and established where it is that you're going to buy, and you've secured that initial offer on that dream property. At that point, you've agreed a euro amount, and at that point, you know exactly what that's going to cost you in terms of sterling based on the exchange rate at that given period of time. However, your completion may only happen in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, as you've gone through the buying process and dealt with all the legalities and documentation and paperwork. So, of course, during that 3 month, 6 month period, for example, the exchange rate's moving. So when you actually come to complete, in theory, your sterling value that you need to pay could be very, very different. So there's a product named forward contract which allows you to secure that exchange rate at that given time, but you don't actually need to send over any monies or release any monies until you actually complete on your property. What that means for you is that you've agreed your euro price for that property, and you've also secured then the sterling value of that property, and that's done. You then don't need to worry about the exchange rates moving over that 3-month period or that 6-month period, and at which point when you come to complete, the amount of sterling that you pay is exactly as you designed when you booked in that forward contract. So that's one of the most common products that are used during the overseas property purchase. There is an alternative product which is named spot contract, and that is simply that offers you no kind of budgetary security. So what that means is when you actually come to complete in 3 months, 6 months, etc., you agree the exchange rate at the given time on the day, and you make that currency exchange at that point. So we'll switch the sterling to euro for you, and then send the euros on to your lawyer, solicitor, or vendor, whichever in your particular case. That's a very, very straightforward piece, but of course it does mean that from the time that you've agreed that initial purchase price to the time that you actually send the funds, you've left yourself open in terms of exchange rate movements. So that can be somewhat of a risk for some people. So as I say, forward contracts are well worth considering, and it's a very, very popular product when it comes to property purchase.
Thanks, Trevor. That's great. We've actually had a question in from Richard this morning, who's listening, just about those forward contracts. And I think what Richard is looking to understand is, when you fix that rate, do you have to set a date that you want to actually access the euros, or can it be, any time within that sort of forward contract period?
So formally, yes, you have to set a date. However, as a business, we specialise we have a specialism in terms of overseas property. So we do recognise that, of course, in that purchase process, dates move, quite frankly. That is just the nature of the beast. So at which point, we offer an awful lot of flexibility around those dates. So as long as you're communicating with us along the way, we can move those end dates. So for example, if you agreed a forward contract for the end of August because you anticipated a 3-month window from now to then, and actually your property completed 2 weeks early, that wouldn't be an issue. We would do something called a drawdown, and we would allow you to access those euros 2 weeks early. And the same vice versa. If you got to a scenario where your property purchase, for whatever reason, was delayed by a couple of weeks, documentation wise, again, speak to us nice and early about this, and we'll extend that date for you in towards September in that particular instance. So yes, you need to select a date. We will assist you with selecting a date, but we are very flexible in terms of those dates, because we are acknowledging, of course, that dates do move during this property purchase journey.
Thank you. Thanks, Trevor. And Jeff's also asked about rates in relation to a forward contract. So if the rates move and actually you could have secured more euros for the sterling value, what happens in that instance?
So once you've agreed the price on a forward contract, that price is secured and that's locked in. So if the rates were to move in a more favourable position for you, you cannot take advantage of that. However, of course, if the rates move against you, you've benefited. So a forward contract isn't necessarily it's not a kind of guarantee. You get a locked in minimum security, and if things work in your favour and you get the upside, it's a risk removal tool. It means that you have no risk in terms of currency movements. And often with customers that are buying overseas property, that's what they're looking to do. They're looking to make sure that by the time they get to that completion date, they can actually afford that property, and that they're suddenly not going to be stung with an extra £20,000 bill, for example.
Great, yeah, makes sense. Thanks, Trevor. Barack has actually asked, what is the cost for smart services?
Sure. So we effectively operate in a similar fashion as a kind of wholesaler, I suppose. So we buy approximately £4 billion worth of currency per year from the interbank market, and as a result, we command a certain price point from the wholesale market, if you will. Our markup, our margin is in the exchange rate. So we then offer an exchange rate to our customers, and the difference in the middle is how we make money. We don't charge up front for a service. So we don't bill you, for example, like a lawyer or a solicitor or whatever it may be. We don't charge you a fixed fee for our services, and we don't charge you a per hour rate for our experts' time over the telephone. We charge you in the exchange rate. by the time you come to complete on your overseas property, you will have spent on average 4 to 5 hours on the phone with one of our currency experts, and at which point that's where our kind of services are charged. We won't charge you a specific fee.
That's great, thank you. I think we've got time for a couple more questions, Trevor. Ian has asked a question about rates. He said, obviously with the pound gaining strength against the euro, do you have any prediction of what might happen over the next few months with rates, and when might be a good time to try and fix the rate? Now, I know that's always a difficult one to answer, but if you can look into your crystal ball, Trevor, and give us the best insight you can.
Yeah, of course, and yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, if I knew the answer, I probably wouldn't be here this morning. I'd probably be living on the beach somewhere in the Caribbean. But frankly, you're absolutely right. We have seen a significant move on sterling euro. If you actually look at the past 12 months, we're about 8% up from the lows back in September 2020. A lot of that largely driven down to the positive vaccine rollout in the UK in comparison to how things have progressed in Europe. How would I expect things to move over the next 6 to 12 months? It's really, really tricky to say. The UK is in a very, very strong position, particularly because of that vaccine rollout. We're now starting to see a lot of positivity in terms of investor movements. So if you look at, again, FTSE 100 over the last 3 to 6 months, significant gains, and at which point it's a lot of money flooding into the UK, supporting that UK economy, and therefore by default that drives the sterling value up. So comparatively speaking, you're in a pretty good spot on sterling euro. However, it completely depends on how, in my opinion, the European vaccine rollout progresses. At the point that we start to see some decent traction within Europe, then perhaps we'll see a bit more positivity about Europe, and therefore European stocks, and therefore money flying back into Europe, and perhaps that sterling euro rate can be off a touch.
Brilliant, thanks, Trevor. Really quickly, a couple of quick last questions that have come through, because I'm conscious of our time. We've got lots to cover with our other panelists. Simon has asked, what happens if you book a forward contract but your property purchase falls through? What would he do in that circumstance?
Yeah, so again, that's it's a tough one when that happens. So as I mentioned, we are very, very flexible in terms of those value dates. So we will try and move them forward for you. So for example, if you book a forward contract, that property falls through, but you're subsequently moving on to another property, then at which point we can discuss at that point moving that forward value date some way forward for you to accommodate that secondary property purchase. If it falls through and you decide, actually, yeah, I'm completely done with this property purchase, I'm not actually going to make the move in the end, then at which point what we would do is we'd have to cancel that forward contract, and we would have to sell those euros back into the market, and we would do that at whatever the exchange rate of the day was. And we would talk you through that. If there was a cancellation cost, that would be applied to yourself. We wouldn't charge a fee for doing that. We would merely just sell the currency that you bought back into the market. But as I say, the flexibility is the key there. You know, if your intention is to continue with another property, then we would look to move those dates for you and give you that flexibility.
Brilliant, thanks, Trevor. And one very quick last question from David: is there a minimum amount people have to be at to transfer with Smart, or do you accept any amounts?
Yeah, and any amounts. We operate with, although we have a high specialism in overseas property purchase, we actually do transactions for customers of all shapes and sizes. So we have some customers who are sending very, very small amounts for friends and family payments and gifting and that kind of thing, up to, you know, multi-million-pound property transactions. So we're incredibly varied in terms of how we operate, and subsequently we allow customers to transact however they want. So we have an expert team of traders over the telephone. We have an online system and an app as well, which gives you that flexibility. So if you did want to send a smaller amount and didn't actually want to speak to anybody, prefer to do it on an app, we can do that for you. And subsequently, often once you've completed that property purchase, you will probably have ongoing smaller requirements. You might just be moving small amounts of money, you know, for living costs or bills or insurance or gardeners or community fees or whatever it may be, and at which point they're transactions that we do all day, every day.
That's great advice. Thank you, Trevor. And thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us today. I will get Trevor's details to all of the listeners today. If you've got any specific questions or particular requirements that you want to talk to Trevor and his team about, we'll certainly make sure that we share all of those contact details at the end. But I want to now move on to our next panelist, Jacqueline from Mortgage Direct. Now, Jacqueline's got an extensive background in finance and business and now uses her skills to advise clients on their mortgage needs. Jacqueline's originally from the Netherlands, has lived in Brazil, Spain, and now Portugal, so is fluent in several languages and really understands the expat lifestyle. So if you are looking to secure a little bit extra to help with that purchase, there's a great opportunity via Jacqueline and her team at Mortgage Direct. So Jacqueline, can I first of all ask you to start just explaining a little bit about Mortgage Direct and how you're able to help the viewers today?
Thank you, Hannah, of course. So Mortgage Direct started about 15 years ago in Spain. And about 6 years ago, we added Portugal to the equation of business because many of our partners were already asking if we could extend our services to Portugal as well. And we have done so successfully. As you mentioned, I've lived in Brazil and are fluent in the Portuguese language, so that helped. We have 2 more people on the ground now in Portugal, so we really have grown the team as in Mortgage Direct because we see there's a really strong demand and need for mortgage advice for people from abroad trying to buy in Portugal too. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Now, the first question I asked Trevor, I'm going to ask a similar question to you. How early on in their buying journey would you recommend that a customer speaks with you and tries to secure a mortgage offer?
Very good question, Hannah. I would say it's never too early. And it usually clients are a bit too late because they've found a property of their dreams and then all of a sudden they need to make a deposit, which is usually about 10%, or it's quite a large sum of money they have to put down. And then they start to question about a mortgage. We have people that come earlier. We always promote that and try to have people early on in the process. So because it's a big transaction and if you need the bank's part of the money, then it's always best to early on engage someone. Have an intermediary like ourselves or someone else who's independent so we can really check the options that you have. Because with some bank you might be successful, not with another. So we really know what to look for and to make sure that we have a successful mortgage application early on. And that you also know what is my buying power because you understand the mortgage money that's available to you. So that's something that really I can't stress enough. It's best to begin early and to have your finances in check before you make any other big transactions or commitments in Portugal.
Great advice. Thank you, Jacqueline. Now, from the survey questions that we asked the audience today, the biggest concern really with mortgages was the amount that the bank will lend versus the property value. Can you give any indication in those loan to value rates and what customers could maybe hope to achieve?
Okay, so bear in mind that the maximum a bank would give if you are not a taxpayer in Portugal, which usually applies to most of our audience, is 70%. So you would need to bring in 30% of your own funds, and you also need to reserve funds for the fees and taxes that come on top of it, which is somewhere between the region of 8 to 10%, depending a little bit on where you're buying, the size of the transaction. So that all makes a difference how much that's going to be. But yeah, so if you work with a rule of thumb as 40% minimum, then you should have enough to cover the deposit and the fees and taxes.
Great, very helpful. Thank you, Jacqueline. Now, John, who's listening in today, has asked a question about securing a pension with retirement. How does that work in terms of income, in terms of different types of pensions? Is that still possible?
If you are retired, yes, you can have a mortgage option if that's the question. It is possible. Bear in mind that most banks will limit the mortgage to be paid off at the age of 75. And so we have to take into consideration how much time is left. For example, I had a recent applicant, if it's a couple buying and one of them is younger, and there's documents in place that prove that the income of one of the partners in case of death would go to the other one, you could still have a longer term, although the oldest applicant is actually closer to that 75 age point. But again, here it really comes down to talking to the right banks, because not everyone is as flexible as looking at these kind of solutions.
That's great. Thank you very much. And I wanted to ask, it sounds a negative question, but useful for us to understand, are there sort of any circumstances, perhaps any type of property, any scenarios that the customers need to be aware of where the banks wouldn't lend?
Well, you could always question yourself. If the bank doesn't want to lend, you can wonder if you would want to buy it. That could be a good reason. Basically, if the property is not built on land that is deemed for residence, so if it's on agricultural land, usually that's not legal to live there. But it becomes quite something of a legal matter. So you also want to look into that with a solicitor. There can be situations where it's possible, but it's really a case-to-case basis. In general, there are some properties which are built by kind of, they call it state kind of funding. So they're cheaper built type of properties. And these are not really something most banks don't want to lend against that. But again, if the bank doesn't want to lend, it's really also a good question to see why is that, and if you would want to proceed with the property.
That's great. Thank you, Jacqueline. And the last quick question, I say quick question, it might not be, but you've obviously said, about talking to you as early as possible to secure, so they understand the amount of money and the budget they've got to work with when property searching. What sort of documentation do you need to see, or would the banks need to see, that people can perhaps start, bringing together and getting their paperwork in order? What sort of documentation do customers need to prepare?
Okay, well, in terms of us, we can do an analysis through the application form that we have. So we do a first check based on the figures that we get from you. And then when we proceed with the banks, we do an official application with them. You would always have to think of documents like your last 2 annual tax returns, or P60 when it's for UK buyers, and you're an employee. You would have to present your bank statements of the last 3 or 6 months. And other sources of income. If you have you have to demonstrate that too. But tax returns, bank statement, and credit reports are the main starting points. And of course, your passport and identity documents. But this also reflects the Portuguese part. You would always have to apply for a Portuguese NIF number, which is a tax number in Portugal, something to get sorted on early too. It's not very difficult, but it's important to have. But in general, these are the kinds of documents the banks would want to check.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for your helpful answers there. A couple of questions have come in with people with, very specific requirements about budgets and income levels and things. So as with Trevor, all the details of Jacqueline and her team will be shared at the end. And for any of those detailed specific questions, we do strongly recommend you get in touch as soon as possible. But I want to move on now to our remaining panelists. So you've sorted out your mortgage, you've sorted out a plan for your currency, and now you get to move on to the really exciting bit, the property hunt. So as I mentioned earlier, we've got the fantastic resources on the Property Guides website. We do have a portal which has got a fantastic range of properties across Portugal, all different price ranges and different property styles to have a look at. So do start your journey there and have a quick look there. But to talk today and to share their expertise, I'm joined by Filippo and Evia from JLL. Now, Filippo leads the international business development team, where he promotes Portugal's fantastic residential and commercial properties to a worldwide audience. And Evia is a senior consultant at JLL with more than 10 years experience in the world of real estate and working with international clients. So we've got some fantastic expertise joining us today. So first of all, can I ask one of you to just give us a little bit of background into JLL and how you can support our customers with their buying journey?
Yes, Anna, thank you very much for having us today. We are very pleased to join this webinar today. JLL, it's an international company. We are in over 80 countries. We have over 80,000 employees all over the world. We are a listed company. and we are present in Portugal since the early 90s, so a very long-standing presence here. At the moment, we have 5 offices in Portugal. We have about 450 employees here. We serve from north to south. We just opened a new office in the Algarve. We have offices, of course, in Lisbon, Porto, Cascais, and Comporta. And so we are very happy to help the clients. We have one of the largest, if not the largest, portfolio of properties available in Portugal, both residential and commercial. Of course, we focus on a high quality level of property. So you will find very unique and very beautiful properties in our portfolio, and especially properties that have an excellent quality behind it. I wanted to say a couple of words regarding COVID and the impact to the residential market very quickly. I mean, Portugal in general has really strong fundamentals, so it has shown to be very resilient to the impact of the pandemic. So all of the people that decided to move to Portugal, relocate here for business or retirement reason, they still did so. So the quality of life, the safety, the education quality, the also easiness for foreign to move here because everyone speaks English and the weather is nice. So it has actually created the right condition, especially in the COVID situation where people can decide where to work remotely. We found lots of new clients decided to move to Portugal in spite of the current health situation. And we found many UK, German, French, but in general clients also from the US and Canada. When they could, they move here, they bought a house, and they are staying in Portugal more and more, attracted by all of these factors. In fact, the general market overview, we just had around about 5% less in terms of number of houses transacted, 2019 versus 2020. This means that we had a little impact on the number of houses transacted, but if we look at the sales volume actually total, we actually have increase of 2%. So we had a little bit less of foreign clients purchasing because they couldn't travel, but the local market, and as I said, all of the people that decided already to move or relocate to Portugal, they continue to actually buy, and so the market has been going really, really well. We also seen some other trends due to COVID. So clients are looking for a more space inside of the apartments or inside of the house to actually have space for a home office, and also having access to green areas and facilities such as gym or swimming pool, both private or communal with the resort or block of apartments, has becoming increasingly important. So for instance, in our team, we created a special lab that helped people to find the right house in our portfolio, and sometimes we can bring also developments that are not on the market yet to find the right property that the client is looking for. So exciting times for Portugal, and I think, yeah, we are very happy to help you out in case you have questions and in case you need help to find the right property in Portugal.
That's great. Thank you so much, Filippo. That's a really wonderful introduction. And I did want to start, obviously you mentioned there about, how Portugal's handled the COVID situation and, how your market has remained very strong, which is fantastic. I wondered if you or Evia could give me just a bit of an indication about what customers could get for their budget, so looking at a range of different budgets and perhaps different areas in the country, if you can give us any indication on the sorts of costs that customers could expect.
Yeah, thank you, Anna, for a question. As Filippo mentioned, the market remains strong, and actually we have more and more buyers coming in. And of course, it also increases more demand, right? So, and as we specialize in high quality homes, and we have, I think, one of the largest portfolio of new developments. So I would say the prices are, to get a quality property, probably would be higher than before. And I would say around 400,000, you can get a really, really high quality property. And for example, I looked like the recent listings, what we had, just to give some idea, in a new development, 1-bedroom apartment, you can get for around 250,000 euros. Two-bedroom apartments from around 610. But of course, it very much depends in which area you are. Are you close to the beach? Are you a little bit more inland? And then I think we can here really relate to what Jacqueline said, that imagine you have your own money, but banks still finance. So even, you can use the bank financing and find the properties that you really love, that meets your criteria.
That's great advice, Sofia. Thank you so much. Now, obviously, we do have a lot of British listeners today. We do have some customers from elsewhere in the world, but mainly our audience base this morning are based in the UK. Can you recommend what areas are good for expat communities? Are there any sort of new areas that expats are travelling to? Any recommendations on that?
Oh, that's a great question, Anna, because as you know, traditionally Algarve was one of the first choices, and there are a very big expat community. But we see new trends now. Also, Lisbon, Cascais, and even Porto is growing. I'm an expat myself, and I live in Cascais area. And my daughter goes to international school, and I see every year there are new children joining. And when going out, we really see also this area becoming more and more attractive. So I think it really depends what's the lifestyle and what are the expectations. If family wants to be in a more, more relaxed environment, play golf, or maybe be more economically active, if they need more services. And I think now it's really spreading out, because it's not everything just about one destination. You have really great opportunities to find fantastic properties around the coastline, or maybe a bit inland. So those are our new trends. If we speak about Algarve, then of course Portimao and Faro has been ranked as top British expat communities, and also Tavira, Vilamoura, Lagos, and Albufeira, of course, are popular. But as I mentioned, also other cities are becoming more and more attractive for expats.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And you mentioned there, obviously, your children in an international school. Do a lot of people come over with families? Is it easy for young children to get into schools and sort of integrate into the community?
Oh, yes, definitely. As Filippo mentioned, pretty much everybody speaks English, and especially if you are in bigger cities, there are, like, for example, around Lisbon and in Algarve, there are very many international schools. Also in Porto, for example, my daughter goes to Billing International School, so she has half day English, half day Portuguese. We live here 6 years, so she's fluent in Portuguese, of course, English. And there are some schools that are purely English, some are, mixed, and there are British school, American school, German school, French school. So it's basically everybody can find a fit, and it's great for children because they meet different cultures. They grew up in a very, very safe environment. So I think it's great for families, and because we have, high-speed internet, very good flight connection. So even for fathers or mothers who work, it's super easy to travel and move around and to do business, because everything here is really facilitating to live and work here and enjoy, the beautiful weather and everything country offers.
Wonderful. Sounds fantastic. Thank you. We've had a question in from Genevieve, who's listening today, who has asked, how easy is it to buy land or maybe a property that needs, major redevelopment work and actually do work on those properties?
Well, it is possible, of course, to buy land. Then it's really important buying land to make sure that on a property you can build and how much you can build. And I think that's why we have lawyers here, because they can also help with that. And of course, we brokers, we also can check that information, because there are some regulations. So, but that I think we can explain a little bit later. But of course, it's a very popular decision, especially now after COVID times, that people want to have bigger plots and build their own houses, maybe have a little garden, pool. So that's of course is possible, and we are here to help.
That's great. Thank you so much. A couple of people have asked questions about sort of purchasing property from an investment point of view. So David's asked, do you support with property management if they wanted to purchase the property and then rent the property out? And also we've had some questions about sort of return on investment and, what values they could get in return on property purchase. I wonder if you could maybe answer those for us.
Yeah, so buying for an investment, yes, we have many investors who buy here mainly because of investment, and maybe they don't need a property right now, and they are planning to use it after, or maybe to resell or to upgrade. So in JLL, we don't have really a property management company, but what we do, we find a tenant. We work with long-term rent, so it's everything that is longer than 1 year. So what happens often is client buys a property with us, and then we become responsible for finding a tenant. And I think it also gives extra credibility to and security to buyer, because they know if they buy from me, so it will be me looking for a tenant. So I will definitely make sure that it's the right investment property. And then we find a tenant and charge a tenant finding fee. But after, here in Portugal, it works a little bit different, because the tenant always pays the rent directly to the landlord, and tenant pays himself all the utilities, electricity, water, gas, and internet directly to service providers. So the management company, we have some third parties, some partners we work with, and they are here to help if there are some problems in an apartment and so. But we provide those contacts. And average returns, it really depends from location to location. We have some investment properties where developer or owner, for example, guarantees 4 or 5% fixed for a certain period of time. So basically it means that they will look for tenants and guarantee a certain income, certain return for an investor. Or if you are renting for long term, then an average, I would say it's between 3.5 to 4.5% if you rent for long term.
Yeah, I totally confirm what Evia said. We have multiple partners that can help with the property management. So according to the type of the property and the type of use the investor wants, so long term versus short term, or touristic kind of rental, we always have the right partners. As well, we have several developers that have agreement with properties operator where they can offer a guarantee return on a property, which is very handy if you don't want to have headaches in the management and you just want a yield in your pocket. So I confirm rental values, they go between 3 and 6% according to the location. When we are looking at the double and triple net, I will say I confirm 3.5 to 4.5% according to your tax rate and to the type of properties. We also can help with furnishing the properties in case it's needed. JLL, we do also have a project management team that can help you in understanding in case you want to build something. We can help you with the project management to actually build and refurbish. And of course, all of our developers and properties are highly checked and selected, so you don't have bad surprises when there are renovation or construction in place. We always offer very good guarantees. So definitely Portugal has been more and more on the map as a European destination for investment, and this will become even more and more popular. In fact, we had a huge amount of new German clients that are discovering Portugal, especially the Algarve, and this is one of the markets that is growing the most.
That's great advice from you both. Thank you both very much. I just wanted to ask a quick question about sort of property taxes and buying taxes and things like that. Do the purchasers have to pay any tax or transfer fees or anything like that when they buy a property? And does that differ in different areas of the country?
Well, I think actually Sofia also can answer that question even better than us. But yes, there is a transfer tax and stamp duty to be paid on acquisition of a property, and that's to be paid on the deed date. So, Filippo, would you like to add maybe like to give the more detailed, or do we keep it to Sofia?
It's okay. I mean, we can say, I think Jacqueline already mentioned it, the closing costs typically in Portugal vary between 7 and 8% according to the value of the property. These taxes and costs are paid at the deed. So when the property is completed, at the very end of the process, there is no agency fee. So our fees and the fees to a broker company is paid always by the seller. That's also important because it's different in different markets. So that is in general what we can say regarding the closing costs. So there are some closing costs, and you have to compute them into the equation when you are planning your budget.
That's brilliant. Thank you both. Thank you so much for answering those questions there. I'm conscious of our time, so it's a perfect opportunity to move on and introduce Sofia Mello at this point. Sofia is with Martinez, Echevarria, Ferreira and Rivera practice in Portugal. And Sofia works in property and immigration law on a daily basis. And the firm as a whole are real experts in working with overseas buyers. So Sofia, welcome today. Thank you for joining us. Can I ask you to give us a little bit of background into the firm and how you can help the customers?
Yes, of course. Good morning to all. Thanks for having us in this group of expertise. So Martinez Echevarria is an office, is a law international office that is based in Spain. And since the early 2000s, they came to Portugal and they started to open offices in the Algarve and Lisbon. And actually, we have 4 offices in the Algarve, so Lagos, Albufeira, Vila Moura and Quinta do Lago, and also in Lisbon, center of Lisbon, and Estoril, and in Oporto too. Because in fact, as was said already here, we have many foreign investors that are not just taking Algarve as main destiny, but they are going to other parts of Portugal that are also very interesting for investment or for residency. So our main business in terms of professional activity is in fact to help foreign investors to come to Portugal to live or to invest, and to help them in several areas of investment. Of course, our office does what any other law office does, but our goal is specifically to work with foreign citizens that choose Portugal for their investment or for living the rest of their lives. So it's a thing that we do on a daily basis. We work with real estate directly because the main investment that foreign citizens show to be able to do is buy a property, and but also other kind of investments like starting business, buying properties and starting business. So we hope to be able to answer all the questions and to help the foreign clients to come to Portugal and be happy here.
Thank you, Sofia. That was a great introduction to the business. I wanted to start a little bit about the property buying process, and we've also got a couple of questions from customers about visas as well. But can you just talk us through how long the property buying process might take?
Yes, well, I will give you that answer that every lawyer says. It depends. So in fact, what the process can take like 2 weeks to be completed if the property is ready to deliver, if all the documents are ready, and if the client, if the investor has the money ready to send to Portugal in a quick way. So that's not the usual way, but I already did processing less than 2 weeks. So it's quite difficult to achieve everything, like a seller willing to deliver the house in 2 weeks, having all the documents ready. So maybe with apartments, it's an easy thing to do, but it will depend basically on this. The availability of the seller to deliver the house, because some of the sellers are living there, they need to move. Some of them, they have rentals that they have to assure. Some of them, they want a little time, so it can take up to 3 months to complete the deal. Otherwise, if there is a mortgage process, of course, we have to take time to complete the process of the mortgage, evaluation of the house. So it can take about, and Jacqueline may say this much better than me, but may take 1 month, 1 month and a half. In the difficult cases, maybe 2 months. But we can normally, when we do a promissory contract, we put a deadline of 2 to 3 months. Other specific cases, like having the need of 6 months, for instance, imagine a buyer that, okay, I will not need a mortgage, I will have the necessary funds in 6 months. If the seller agrees with it, it can take 6 months to complete. But normally we can say 2 months to 3, but can be a lot less, can be a lot more.
Thank you. That's great. What would the typical fees that a customer would pay a lawyer for this sort of process? I know, again, it depends, I know, but if you can give us an indication.
Yes, the regular fees that you pay to any lawyer in Portugal, it's around 1% of the purchase price, but it also depends. For instance, in our office, we work with fixed fees, so the client can know exactly what fee he's going to pay until the end of the process. So we fix the fees. Normally it's 1% plus the VAT tax, but for instance, after, if the price is over 1 million euros, for instance, we start decreasing the percentage because it's quite huge, so we can adjust the fees, but regularly it's around 1%.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. Another question. In the UK, our buyers are very used to having a property survey done before purchasing a property. Is that sort of standard practice in Portugal? Do you have any advice on that kind of thing?
Yes, and that's why we love so much the British clients, because they are used to this. Of course, it's very, for instance, for a French client, it's very difficult to explain that, to know technically if the house is okay, if there's no hidden problems, you should do a survey. But they don't understand. So why should I pay for a survey? The real estate agent must assure me that everything is okay. So no, the real estate agent must not assure that you don't have humidity problems, because the only way to know exactly what the problems or not having the problems, the only way to be sure of that is effectively to go to a survey and to have a technical report that can assure you what is the matter with the house. If there is some works to be done very soon, in 2 years or 3 years, most surveyors give that kind of advice. So it's not mandatory. Of course, you can buy a house without even seeing it or having a survey. But it's specifically in these cases where there is COVID, no possibility to travel, and most clients want to close the deal before they come here, so they use virtual tours to the house. A survey is essential, because you will know from a technical point of view if your house will have some issues to solve or not, if the house is that good to buy. So for the British clients, they already tell us about the survey. Of course, if this is a new house, a newly built house, maybe, and as it has a guarantee and all of that, maybe it's not so essential. But if you're buying a resale house, maybe this is essential and can save you a lot of money and problems in the future. So yes, not mandatory, but we highly recommend it to be done.
Thank you. That's great. I'm conscious of our time, but we do have a few questions about visas and residency, and I know, Sofia, you're very well placed to answer these. So, question from John. He's retired, and he wanted to ask if there was any way to secure residency as a retiree. Does he need to get a golden visa, or can he get another type of visa?
Yeah, for the British, this opportunity of the golden visa open now because they are not considered from the European Union. But for the retired people, there are other, and I can say cheaper ways to get residency. So if they have an address in Portugal, known home, a bought home, they can buy or they can rent, they can get what is called a D7 visa. The D7 visa is a residency visa that foreign citizen can ask for, and they just have to justify they have the minimum income per month to support themselves when they are in Portugal. And the minimum income for one investor, it's the same as the minimum salary in Portugal, around 650 euros. So if the investor has that, he can present himself to the Portuguese consulate before coming to Portugal. The only thing is that this needs to be started before coming to Portugal, so the investor can come to Portugal with the correct visa to complete the residency process. But yes, not the golden visa is not the only way to get residency. And for investors, for people who wants to start a business in Portugal, or retired people that has his own income, yes, it's possible to get other kinds of residency, and it's not a difficult process.
Thank you. That's great. And another question on golden visas. Somebody is looking to purchase two properties, so one to live in as their main home and then another one as an investment. Can they group together the amount to secure the golden visa, or does it all have to be on one property?
No, it can be 1, 2, 3, 5. It can be 5 properties of 100 euros each. So the important is that the main investment, that the sum of the investment is the minimum applicable for the golden visa. That regularly is the 500,000, can be less if properties for reconstruction or to repair, but nevertheless can be several properties. And as the golden visa doesn't mean that the citizen has to live in Portugal permanently, that's the advantage of the golden visa. They can even rent the both properties if they want, or live in another, rent the other. It doesn't matter. It can be several properties.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's really helpful advice. And I think that time for one last quick question, just about starting businesses. Is it suitable? Is it able for British buyers to start a business when they're in Portugal, or is there any sort of complications with different visas for business owners and things like that?
Well, it depends. It's not difficult. Any kind of residency visa allows a person to a foreign citizen to start a business in Portugal. This is not difficult. We did it already. Even imagine people who has their own companies outside Portugal. They want to start a business in Portugal to continue the activity they have, like buying houses, renting, building, or something like that. So the most important thing is that you can, if you are just coming to Portugal to start a business, you can apply for a D2 visa. It's different visas, but in the consulate they will explain exactly the difference of the visas. So if you are retired, or if you have your own income and you want to come to Portugal just on that basis, it's a D7 visa, like for people who has their own income, and they can come here, apply for the visa, have the visa, and start a business. No one will put any problem on that. But if the main purpose is, I want to go to Portugal, even if they don't buy any house in the beginning, but I want to go to Portugal to start a business, whatever business it is, the only thing is that they have to present a business plan, explain exactly which will be the investment, how many employees, and all of that. But it's a different visa. But any kind of residency, if the citizen is here in Portugal already living, they can start a business with no problem. It has to be a legal business, okay? Just that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sofia. I'm conscious we've had so many questions in this morning around the topic of visas, and we will share a link with you at the end to a session we did with Sofia a couple of weeks ago where we really went into the visa process in a lot of detail, and we'll also share her and her team's contact information so you can speak directly about your specific requirements. But I will move on just to my last couple of slides and wind up for today. I just wanted to introduce you really briefly to our team. We have a customer service team who are on hand at the end of the phone to support you as much as they can and to introduce you to the experts. They can put you in contact with anybody you've heard from today and also other businesses who can support you in other aspects of the buying process. It's Neha and Julia in particular who focus on Portugal, but do feel free to give any of the team a call whenever you need. As I mentioned there, we did some sessions a couple of weeks ago about visas and healthcare for Portugal. Sofia took part in that session as well, and that's all available on the Your Overseas Home website, as is registration to future sessions. We've got a session in a couple of weeks' time about finances, pensions, tax, currency, things like that for your move as well. So have a look at the YOH website, and there's lots of information on there for you. As promised, the contact information is on screen for all of our fantastic panelists today. Thank you all so much for all of your time and all of your expertise. We had so many questions. I feel we could have chatted on for another hour and all of these wonderful questions. But as I mentioned, do please get in touch with the speakers directly for your specific requirements. And we will also circulate a link to a replay of today's session and these contact details again. We'll send that round via email next week if you want to have another look on anything. So I will wind up today there. Thank you again to all of the panelists for all of your insight. Thank you to all of our customers, whether you listened in live or you're catching up with us on demand. Thank you for joining us. And the last thing to say is we just wish you a really, really successful property purchase and move to Portugal. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.